On this episode of Turning Point Tactics, I'm going to be going through the weekly Metawatch for the 15th of September. We're going to talk through UK events that have been up and happened last week. We're going to talk through upcoming UK events, give an overview of sort of some stats provided by Smiles, Lies and Gunfire for the overperforming teams and underperforming teams in the global meta, a tactical tip for any subscribers to the channel at the end. So if you do that, you get a little cheeky tactical tip, and answer a Patreon priority question provided by our patrons. So with all that said, let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Turning Point Tactics, the competitive Killteam 40k YouTube channel focused on giving you the strategies and tactics to seize initiative every turning point. I'm your host Ryan, and I'm here to help give you the tips and tricks to elevate every part of your Killteam experience. So no matter if you're a casual or a competitive player, there should be something here for you. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there's a few ways you can go about doing so. You can join the Patreon, where you get access to members only Discord, Patreon priority questions, early access to content, exclusive content, and tournament awards. Or if you find yourself buying Killteam goodies or hobby supplies, you can use one of our affiliate links in the description below, or discount codes with Crossfire Games and GG Prints. We're always keen to hear your thoughts and feedback, so don't leave that comment box empty. Let us know what you think. Once again, thanks for your support, and with all that said, let's get into it. Okay, so I've checked BCP and I found two events for the last week that happened. So if I have missed your event, please let me know. Put it in the comment box below and I'll try and catch up and add it in next week's Metawatch. But the two events that I'm aware of is the Summer Shootout at Partisan Games in Andover. That was a 3-round event with 16 players. So a somewhat sizable event, pretty standard, I would say for you know, a standard Killteam tournament. 16 players, 3 rounds, works quite nicely. The top 3 then, which is what I know everyone's interested in. So in first place with Hunter Glade is Jacob Goodenough, going undefeated with 3 wins, which is awesome to see. In second place with Raveners is Peter Worsley, again undefeated, 3 wins, awesome to see. And in third place, Kieran Flanagan with his Plague Marines going 2 wins and 1 loss. So let's talk through some of those, because I think it's gonna be interesting for people to know what I think about them. So firstly, Plague Marines. So I think for a lot of teams, or a lot of players, Plague Marines were sort of assumed to be sort of out of the meta broadly based on some of the nerfs. I think, you know, there was some pretty like sizable nerfs to their poison mechanics, for example, which I think was pretty harsh. So you know, I'm actually quite happy to see them up in third place, and so you know, congratulations for your performance in running the team, because quite clearly that's, you know, that takes some doing, Kieran. So awesome to see. I wonder how it would have continued had we gone to 4th round, that sort of stuff, and whether or not the Plague Marines would have run out of steam, or if they would have been able to continue to keep up that sort of tempo. But essentially, with a lot of the new operatives that are coming out, kill teams, say Deathwatch and Canoptek Circle, I'm not sure if they have the durability against some of those really killy teams to potentially go toe to toe. I might be wrong on that one, but I'm just thinking that, you know, 6 models, like, I just feel like the heavy plasma incinerator, the huge hammer, the thunder hammer, that sort of stuff, is probably going to be enough to kill them. And I don't know if they have the damage output, the raw damage output, to like 1 activation kill a lot of the Deathwatch players in return, particularly if they're getting the damage mitigation. So good to see Plague Marines up in third place. I think they're going to be an interesting place for the meta. I'm actually just going to quickly check, because I'm interested to see what their general win percentage is. 47.71%, but a pretty healthy player base with like over 400 games played. So, you know, 48% win percentage isn't bad. It sits in that middle, but I just feel like against a lot of these other elite teams, maybe potentially they're not going to have the I might be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong. Okay, in second place then, it's all about Peter's performance with his Raveners. So you're undefeated. I mean, it's amazing to see Pete doing so well with Raveners. Again, so in the global meta, they're on a 54% win rate. I think they're going to make a really interesting team for this new TAC Ops. I'm not too sure if this was played with the new TAC Ops. I assume it was played with the old TAC Ops, because I don't think anyone would have had copies by then. I might be wrong. So potentially they did. but let's say that they are like the new Seek and Destroy, the new infiltration ones. I think are really good for Raveners into horde teams and that sort of stuff. So I can see them quite enjoying this meta going forwards. I'm unsure how well they do into the Deathwatch matchup. I'd be interested to know from people's perspective. I think it's a really hard matchup for both sides. You're both 5 models. You're both susceptible to a lot of variance, right? Because like one failed melee here or there, and suddenly the game can swing quite significantly. And yeah, like I just feel like for both sides, TAC Ops is so hard in that environment, right? Because I mean, neither side can really score rout that easily. Dominate isn't particularly good pick because you can only really max out at 5. Assuming you're tabling your opponent, which is a kind of a big ask. And then like, are you onto security TAC Ops, or like are you onto infiltrate TAC Ops? I don't know. It's an interesting one, right? So maybe they play a slow game and they do like a plant devices, and they just try and force the Deathwatch player to have to play around that, or give them crit op. So I don't know. It's an interesting scenario, but great to see Raveners again doing so well. And the one that I want to talk about a little bit more detail is Jacob coming in first with his Hunter Clade. So he has posted some interesting stuff on the Teleport Tactics Discord, essentially talking through like why he thinks Hunter Clade are in a good place, and like explaining how he thinks that they are performing so well in the meta, which is awesome to see. So I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm stealing away some of his great thoughts, but I just thought I would just cover off a few bits. So one of the sort of themes that I think he said is that a lot of people, I think, overestimate the effect of the depreciations. So I think he thinks that actually, you know, that they're still really good, and even though you have this sort of slight negative in aspects, you can make up for it with what you're achieving with that, particularly with the Firefight Poi to give you, I believe it's Omnicide Imperative, the one that lets you basically have an additional boon or buff for your active operative. So the fact that you can change these things, so you can use a ploy to basically go, right, I'm going to change into a different imperative now, and then I'm going to buff that imperative to potentially do like a double strike with a Rust Stalker or something like that to be doing like a 12 to 13 damage. You know, it depends upon who you're using. If you've got the Princeps Aura, but that's a lot of damage to be putting out in a single activation, or the first strike of your single activation, right? Like that's scary for pretty much any team in the game, and it's putting people within like a very reasonable threat range to just be, you know, 2 hit off the board. So that's like really like that flexibility between them is really good. And note that you can kind of choose that on the fly, right? So you're constantly able to like adjust where you want to be. I also think they're one of the most defensive teams in the game. Having so many 10 wound bodies is a buff. You know, they're hard to kill. You can also give those bodies damage reduction. You can turn off rerolls if you wanted to. You can have -1 piercing. You have like injury auras and attack dice being removed on the vanguards. Like there's a lot of defensive stuff that you can stack together to then be able to play that really well. And for archetypes, they're pretty good with Seek and Destroy and Recon, right? So they have this sort of like ability to play either very hyper aggressive and get kills, which I think in, you know, these new TAC Ops is going to be really strong, or they can play like a defensive game and play slowly and just be really durable and just be hard to shake off the board using their activations effectively. So with so many big like effective shooting guns and effective shooting melee operatives, and the ability just to flex wildly as you need to, I think they're in a really strong place. And you know, I'll spoil the sandwiches a little bit, but they're on a 60% win rate, doing really well. And although that they have a, you know, somewhat small player base, they are performing exceptionally well with that player base. So I think they're in a good place. I think people are going to have to start learning how to play against Hunter Clade. Like I think they've, just as they were last edition, amusingly, they have been buffed into relevance, right? So if you're not aware of what they can do, then you're probably going to get caught out, because they can do quite a lot and have a lot of flexibility. If you're interested and you want to learn more about Hunter Clade, I highly recommend that you jump on the Discord and you speak to Jacob and ask him the questions on there, because he's given loads of details. And has way more information than I've given there. But that was a quick overview of why I think they're doing well, and I think they're in a strong place. I think they're very meta relevant right now. So they definitely scare me as a Deathwatch player. Okay. There was another event though, and this was up in Stockport. So it was in Element Games. It was the Great Timber Hunt run by the Deadwood crew. So it was a 4-round event and had 22 players. So first place went to David Law with his Tempestus Aquilons. He went 3 wins and a single draw. I believe the only one that he drew to was the second place player, who also went 3 wins and a single draw. So that's James Hale playing his Heathkyn Jaeger. And in third place, we see the first outing of the Deathwatch. So Connor Meacham running Deathwatch with 3 wins and a single loss. So I'm just going to touch on all 3 of these. So we'll start in third place with Deathwatch. So Connor is a fantastic player. He's a really strong player. So I'm not surprised to see him in the top 3, right? It makes sense. And he's running Deathwatch. Now, I don't know if they're using the old approved DOPS or the new approved DOPS, so sorry, I can't comment on that. But assuming that it's the new approved, the old approved DOPS, because I don't think people would have had them by then. I might be wrong, but correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Then essentially he has the access to, I think, some quite strong security options, being able to do seize ground, that sort of thing. But I can see how going against like Aquilons, which is his one loss, might be a tough one to go into as a matchup. Deathwatch are durable, but they're not as durable as you might think versus piercing 2 weapons hitting on 3s. And, Aquilons can bring 2 of those as well as a bunch of piercing 1. So if you can get those correct model matchups, if you're hitting the Jaegers with piercing 2, for instance, hitting on 3s and severe, you're going to chip through. Like, one of the things that Jaegers does not like is dev wounds, and having access to 2 different sources of dev wounds with severe attached is pretty good for you to be able to then do the damage against that. And then equally, having access to a lot of piercing across the board means you can do quite a bit of damage to the other models. I found it really hard to play into Aquilons generally with elites. Their turning point 2 threat range is ridiculous. So I always have to measure out and just remind myself of quite how far they can move with their drops. And so you have to get this weird prediction game of trying to figure out, right, where are they going and what they're doing to be able to sort of counter them. So, but a fantastic performance outside of that for the Deathwatch, coming in hard straight away on sort of the first weekend of release with 3 wins and a loss piloted by Connor. So congratulations to him for that. And then James Hale running Heathkyn Jaeger, 3 wins and a draw. What a fantastic performance. I had the joy of playing a really good Spanish player with Heathkyn Jaeger out in WTC. And I was pretty impressed by them, actually. Like, a lot of the game plan comes down to sort of where they can put the dead body token that they want to sort of try and recover or support. And they have a lot of efficiency increase by doing that. It's essentially a mystic buff within a sort of 3-inch aura of a token. And so I found that a really interesting mechanic to play around, because they want to try and position this in the right place and then play around that to their advantage, right? So I'll be interested to see how they go into the new meta, because in my opinion, I think with Approved Ops 2025, they're going to get a lot stronger, because Seek and Destroy for them has become easier to score. They're able to get Rout far easier than they were before. They're able to get Dominate tokens quite well, and they are durable enough to be able to survive with those Dominate tokens. And I'm particularly thinking about some of the silent weapon options that they have. If they're silent snipers picking up kills, it's going to be really hard for you to be able to reach and get to. And there's a few ways that they can do that, which will catch people out potentially that they're not necessarily expecting. And then even if you do reach them with the damage reduction, all that sort of stuff on top, they can be quite hard to remove. And then Infiltration gives them some other options as well. So they can just go with, I'm going to go Steal Intelligence and just try and kill people and pick up tokens at the end. And the fact they have access to kind of easy 3 APL is, again, quite good to be able to achieve that. So I think Heathkyn Jaeger are going to be in a good place. I think these new tack-ups are better for them. I think, I'll be interested to see how they do the matchups into elites and that sort of stuff, because I think they have options, but it's just going to be interesting to see how they play around those options. I think maybe you play more of an infiltrate game, maybe you plant devices like this, rather than trying to go for the killy stuff. But then into hordes, you're way more scoreable than you were before. So really interesting to see Heathkyn Jaeger doing so well, up in second place. Congratulations to James for piloting them so well. And then finally, David Law running his Tempestus Aquilons, 3 wins and a draw. Fantastic to see. I think Aquilons are going to absolutely love Approved Ops 2025. I think they're going to be incredibly meta relevant with access to security and recon. They have Envoy, which they can do really, really well, particularly with the ability to essentially hold someone in space that you can't interact with until they drop them. That's pretty wild. So that's a guaranteed TVP for them on turn 10.2, which you can't really stop. The fact that if they're on open board, they can stage a really long way away and use the advantages to their advantage to hold models back that are the Envoy, then they move dash into your territory at the end of the turn. So if they out-activate you, the Envoy is going to be really difficult for you to then to work against. And equally, if they play, say, flank as a game mode, as I said, they have so much pressure on that table when they can drop in from their orbit on turning point 2 that actually pushing up against them is going to feel really rough, I think, to counter that sort of flank gameplay. So I think they're going to be in a great place. I think they're going to love the fact that there is a lot of elites out there. I think Deathwatch in particular are going to be their hunting ground. And I think for them, the main thing is going to be using the AP weapons effectively and forcing those pairings that they want, right? Like they want to try and get the piercing 2 weapons against the AP 1 guy or the Aegis guy. They want to try and get the piercing 1 against everyone else and just try to chip down models and just focus them down until they can remove them. So I think, Aquilons doing really well. They have been doing well before. They're going into the new meta, and I think they're only going to do better. Just quickly on win rates, because I'll just double check where Aquilons sits. They're currently on a 51% win rate. So I'm expecting that to trend upwards for Aquilons with Approved Ops 2025. I think it's more favourable to them now than it was before, even though with plant beacons and that sort of thing, it was good. I just think it's better for them now. And Heathkyn Jaegers, just for awareness, they are, where are we? That's Heathkyn, not quite the right one. Jaegers, 49%. So again, I'm expecting that to trend upwards with the new Approved Ops 2025. So not by loads, I don't think we're going to see Jaegers above 55% or anything like that, but I expect to see Jaegers on the other side of 50 probably, rather than down at 49%. And then Aquilons, I think we'll see pushing the 55% win rate is what I'm expecting to see based on the team strength, the favourable matchups they have access to, and who they're probably going to be going against in future. So those are the 2 Killteam events that I could find this week. As I said, if I missed your event, please let me know. Put it in the description, put a link to it, and I'll try and catch it up next week to make sure that people are aware of it and we talk about it. Let's talk about upcoming UK events. So in the description below is the link to the Talkify page, which is talkify.com/Killteam or KT events /pinboard, where you see all the events that are coming up in the UK. You can click on it, takes you straight to the BCP, and then you can buy your tickets and away you go, right? So it's a really easy way to be able to get and attend events. And all the local UK TOs are now in a big group together, and we're sharing information. We're trying to deconflict schedules. We're trying to get more people attending more tournaments. And this is a great way to be able to do that. So thank you to Simon for doing this. If you are interested in attending a Killteam event, check it out. You might find that there's one nearby you, and suddenly you go, actually, I will plan to do that, and I can make that weekend or wherever it's going to be. So I'll run through the sort of the next couple of weeks. So 20th of September, we have the Dune Hammer Open. That is in Dumfries in Scotland. That is a single event, I believe. Then on the 21st of September, on the Sunday, it's Killteam Stokes Operation Oatcake in Stoke-on-Trent. On the 27th and 28th of September, is the London Grand Tournament in London. That's twined with the UKTC, which will be a big event. I think there's almost 90 tickets sold. So should be an amazing event. And if you want to get involved, I highly recommend picking up some tickets and getting down to London to be able to get amongst it. Also on the 27th of September, the Knots Killteam is running the Into the Tomb World sort of beginner-friendly new edition intro games. So just a 3-round event, and the idea of that essentially is we haven't played Tomb World before, so people are going to turn up, they're going to play Tomb World, they're going to play the new teams potentially, and then try and learn what the rules are. So slower paced, that sort of thing. That's in Sutton in Ashfield near Mansfield. On the 4th of October, you have the Yorkshire Killteam Forged in Fire, which I believe is that not the team event? Or I'm going to have to click onto it now to make sure. So they have a team event as well, but I'm not sure if this is the one or not. No, it's just as a casual. This is why. So on the 4th of October, there is 2 events going on. There is the Killteam Teams event for the 4 cities, and then at the same time, they're running a casual event up to 16 players in the same place at the outpost. So that's in Sheffield. So if you're interested in doing that, you can go check that out, because I believe everyone else is going to the team event. So it's nice that they put that alongside so that you can essentially do both. 11th of October, you have Cambridge Killteam running its Oktoberfest, and that's as I said, in Cambridge, and that's a 4-round event, so that should be pretty cool. And then I'll finish off on the 18th of October. We have the Brighton Battlegrounds in Brighton and Hove, 4 rounds event. And finally, 19th of October is the Notts Killteam Skirmish Sunday in Sutton and Ashfield. So that takes us out till mid-October. You've got at least 8 events there that you can see. If you're running an event and you haven't heard me call it out, and you want to get it added to that pin board, then you can follow the link in the description below to be able to find where you can add your Killteam events and then submit them to Simon. He'll get your event up there, or you can add it yourself. So there's ways to get it on there, but hopefully it'll mean we get more people playing more Killteam more often. Okay, so that is the UK overview. Hopefully that was of use. We're going to talk about now the wider sort of meta win rates, and this is looking at the global meta rather than anything else. So for that, I use data provided by Smiles, Lies and Gunfire. So thank you very much for doing the number crunching and providing this data to the community. It's really helpful. And the website for that is pretentiousplastic.ops.com, and you can check that in the description below as well. So you can check it out and you can go look yourself and you can see how your team's performing and what that means for you. But I'm going to talk about some of the top performing teams and some of the worst performing teams and just kind of explain why I think they're in that way. So the best team right now, according to win rates, is Deathwatch on a 65% win rate, coming straight out swinging. Now, only 50 games played, so not too crazy, but a growing percentage of games and a strong win rate to begin with. There's a few things with this. I think they're an easy team to pick up and play, and I think they're going to catch a lot of people out because they don't know how to play against them yet. So the sort of the 2 caveats I'll give to this is I would expect this to potentially come down a little bit. That being said, I think they have a strong rule set. I think they might have a favourable meta at the moment, and if people are still figuring them out, I see them being pretty strong for the foreseeable. It'll be interesting to see what happens in a few weeks' time to see if that continues to remain strong or if people have figured out how to play around 5 model teams by then, because there's always a little bit of shock and awe when a team first arrives. That being said, I do think Deathwatch are strong, so I'm not surprised to see them doing quite so well. With that exact same vein, in second place is Canoptek Circle with a 60% win rate. So again, they're a much harder team to pick up and play. I think for a lot of players, you're not going to be able to just go, yep, cool, I'm going to pick up Canoptek and away I go. But I think for a lot of players that are playing against them, if you've never played against them before, you're going to get caught out by all the sort of tricks and shenanigans that you're just not aware that they can potentially do. And therefore, you're having to learn that experience, which means potentially they're going to have that elevated win rate initially before it stabilizes a little bit going forwards. That being said, I think they're a really strong team. I think Deathwatch and Canoptek have definitely come out at the sort of top of the meta, in my opinion. So I'm not surprised to see them that they're doing quite so well, quite so early. But yeah, we'll see in a couple of weeks. Does it trend down? Does it remain same, or does it go up? Potentially with Canoptek, I think with a lot of strong players jumping on them, I could see that win rate actually going up because unlike Deathwatch, where they're sort of an easy team to learn, I think Canoptek might be a hard team to learn, and therefore you'll see the later surgence of people figuring out how do I actually use my matrix? How do I get my models in the right place? What tac ops works for this team? What tac ops don't work for this team? And I wouldn't be surprised to see if maybe Canoptek overtake Deathwatch in the long run, but in the short run, I think Deathwatch is going to be out ahead for the next few weeks, in my opinion. But longer term, might start seeing them creep up. That's a prediction. I might be wrong. I'm very interested to see how these teams perform and improve up to 2025, because I think a lot of good players are looking at these teams as ones that they want to play. So I think we're going to see them at the top of the meta being played all over the place, right? And I think actually Deathwatch, the public reception for Deathwatch has been phenomenal. I think people are genuinely really excited for this team. So yeah, I think we're going to see them everywhere. So you're gonna learn, like, you're gonna get those reps in pretty quick, I think, against Deathwatch, and learn how to play against them pretty fast, or not, like, I guess, and learn to lose against them pretty fast. Hopefully, learn to play against them. In third place, I already sort of stole the sandwiches for this one, is Hunter Clade on a 60% win rate. I talked about why I think they're good. Going into the new approved ops, I think they're in a really strong place. Seek and Destroy is better for them against Horde teams. The recon options are still there if they want to play that sort of thing. I think Retrieval is a good option for them. I think Flank can be a good option for them. I think Overrun is a good option for them. I think Dominate can be a good option for them. So they've got, like, in my opinion, a really sort of solid options, like 4 tac ops that can flex quite well into different teams. So I think they're going to be a good place, and we'll see how they perform on the new crit ops and that sort of stuff. But I think Hunter Clade might be sneaky good for the next few weeks. We'll see. In fourth place is Gellerpox, running at 59%. So again, there's some secret sauce there with Gellerpox that we haven't quite found out yet. I think, interestingly, this, and I talked about this last week, I think, like, them being able to remove an equipment option against you, and the fact that we don't have scouting options, means that you get like a double whammy, and it's like a double buff for them. So because previously one of the techniques was, like, if you needed a barricade or a razor wire or whatever in a certain place, you'd wait until your, like, scouting step to then bring that out. Like, if you had a bit of equipment that was critical to your team, you'd do it then because they couldn't remove it. Whereas now, like, they you can't do that. That tactic is gone. So they're going to roll a dice, and if they get lucky, they're going to be able to take something from you, and you're not going to be able to have any control over it. So it might become much harder to root block them the way that you want to, or to use that player placed equipment as effectively as you'd hope. So again, like, interesting to see them doing quite so well. I can see that going up potentially, noting that there's been, you know, already a good performance with them, and I think, like, generally, I think they're getting stronger attack ops and stronger access to sort of equipment denial options in a way. So I think they're going to get better. And then Sanctifiers running at 59%. Again, continuing to perform well. The combination of damage reduction and movement potential, I think, is really good for them. Now, interestingly, I think they're going to do really well into a lot of the meta, but potentially not, like, the heavy elites necessarily. And the reason I say that is, like, access to Envoy, for instance, the ability to have lead the procession and hold your Envoy so far away, lead the procession to bring them 3 inches forwards, then move dash your Envoy to an appropriate place, is really strong. Like, that's going to give them, I think, access to sort of safe VP that people weren't necessarily expecting, because you've got 12 inches of movement within a turning point to get someone where they need to be, which means you can essentially sit in your deployment zone on some maps and run these guys forwards to be able to then score your Envoy right at the end of each turning point, and have freedom to do that repeatedly. Now, the thing I think that they might struggle with from my sort of initial discussions is how well they do into the elite matchup. So they have the Melt Gun, which is, you know, their sort of main elite killing tool. But if that whiffs, or, like, if you don't get initiative on the following turning point, like, that could be really difficult. And there's certain ways that you might be sequenced so that your opponent going into, you know, the turning point where it matters has, like, +1 and a reroll, something like this, and now suddenly you're in a difficult situation, or, you know, heaven forbid it's even worse than that, they've got, like, +3 and a reroll or something like this, right? I doubt you'd be in that scenario, but hypothetically you could be. And then that melty gun, like, as a last activation for a first activation, is now looking real exposed in comparison to what it did before, because, you know, being on a sort of 50-50 roll off, not quite 42-58, whatever it is, but you know what I mean, versus having these sort of stacked cards will mean that potentially it doesn't feel quite as good to do that, you know, last activation, first activation. Or conversely, it might feel way better where you're almost guaranteed to be able to get it. But that variance between games, I think, is going to be really difficult for them against elites. Okay, those are the overperforming teams, and then I'm going to just quickly touch on the 5 underperforming teams. So, Exaction are the 5th worst performing team, or yeah, whatever you want to call it, at 43%. So I'm surprised to see Exaction quite so low down. I think they are not quite as bad as 43% suggests, but potentially there's just a few matchups there where they're struggling. I think one of the things for me that I think they struggle with is with security and seek and destroy. It's just that potentially they're just struggling to get the killing potential that they need, or they're struggling to, like do the security APL control that they need as well. Will that change in the new approved ops? I think so. I think they're going to be able to get the kills better. I think route is more achievable for them on certain maps. Dominate, I'm not 100% convinced by, because I just don't know if they're durable enough to be able to get those kills and then survive. But Envoy, I can see working potentially. If you heavily out activate, you can use things like your dog potentially to have that really far away and have a massive movement potential with an Envoy. I think that the attack ups are better for them, but I'm not 100%. So I know people like Mikkel, the Exaction masters, are probably watching this, and they can let me know in the description. What do you think, man? Do you think of new approved ops is good news or bad news? Where's it going for that team? Next up is Hand of the Archon on 43%. It seems like they never really recovered from the nerfs. Again, they feel like a good killy team, but potentially just a bit too fragile. I know there's always a question of can you get the ball rolling with them. With the agents buff, and being able to hand out those pain tokens at the start of each turning point, I feel like you should be able to have some control over that. But do they have enough oomph to kill these really hard to kill teams like Canoptek Circle with the amount of healing that they can do? Is a question that I don't yet know. And I guess I'm just cognizant that there's a lot of 4-5 damage in that team, that even if you get in melee with the big bugs, they're doing 4-4, and just you could end up potentially just getting squidged, and then when they counteract they heal 3d3 or something like this, and so suddenly you've not achieved the damage that you needed to or thought you were going to achieve when you're trading an operative. So I'm less convinced by Hand of the Archon going up, but maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe that there's some sneaky techniques there that I'm not aware of. What do the Hand of the Archon players think? Is Approved Ops 2025 your time to shine, or are you going to need some balanced data slate help? Next up is Deathcore of Krieg on 39%. And I'm going to actually talk about all the last three teams in a similar vein. So Deathcore of Krieg, 39%. Kazakin, 38%, and Pathfinders, 35%. So interestingly, all of these teams are doing quite poorly, and they're all essentially shooting hordes. They're a single damage type team broadly, right? And I know that you can have the Sergeant in Kazakin can have a chainsaw or whatever, and I know that you can have a power sword and the Sergeant in Deathcore. But generally, they are a shooting based team, right? And I think that the way Volcus is, and the way ITD is, and the way that 2mod is, that they'll struggle with. That being said, now Volcus is being redesigned to be more shooty. I wonder if that was going to help these teams come out a little bit. I still think they have some horrendous matchups. I think the Felgon matchup's really tough for them. I think the Goremonger matchup's really tough for them, and potentially that's just going to be too much for them to be able to deal with. Because if you just can't do the damage, or you have to kill something twice, and they're trading at a more efficient rate, you're just going to struggle to do that, I think. So I'm interested to see how these shooting teams perform in the new Volcus. So if you guys are playing the new Volcus maps now, let me know. Do you think that it's still favourable for melee teams? Is it more balanced? Is it are shooting teams now in a better place? My initial games made me think that actually shooting teams have a bit more play, but it's still a lot of heavy. There's still plenty of places to hide. There's plenty of places to stage. It's not like it's just free shots. So I don't know if it'll be enough for them. And I guess Deathcore and Pathfinders are kind of on the way out. But for Kazakin, those sorts of teams, is that enough, or do these teams need a bit more help to be able to get them out of this sort of rut? Because they have been down at this sort of win percentage, particularly Pathfinders and Kazakin, for a while now. So I'll be interested to see if they can get up and out of it, really. And hopefully changes to Volcus works. Or maybe we all need to adopt Beta Decima to give these shooting teams more opportunity to shoot people across the map. Not my personal solution, but I know that's what some people would say is the solution. I'm looking at you, Jason. There are people out there that do love Beta Decima, and they're pushing for it to be more widely accepted. But at the moment, it doesn't seem to be accepted by tournament play, and the introduction of another Into the Dark means that I think we're going to see a skew, personally, on more Into the Dark games than we did before, because you might end up going to a tournament which is Volkus, Into the Dark, and ITD and Tomb World, and then suddenly you're up to like now 2 out of 3 ITD with Guard and that sort of stuff, which probably favours elites. So as a TO, what's your thoughts on that? Are you gonna try and bias it to have more open boards, or are you going to try and force a 50-50 split between ITD and Tomb World with open as the other 50%? Or are you going to go with a third? Or are we going to go to a format style? Like, are we going to have 25% Beta Decima, 25% Volkus, 25% ITD, and 25% Tomb World? Or is it 30-30-30? Like, what's the split that you're going to try and do? Because I think that's going to be really interesting for meta win rates. I think for people watching this from outside the UK, for the UK events, generally it's been pretty much 50% ITD and Volkus at most events that I go to. And I think that will probably change at the moment to look more like, I think 33% Volkus, 60% ITD and Tomb World in like a sort of 30-30-30 split. I might be wrong, but that might explain why you see some teams ranked higher than others in our meta. Okay, that is the global meta win rates. So that's that covered off. And the next section is going to be only for subscribers. So if you're a subscriber to the channel, you can stand by and listen to a tactical tip. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, please go and find another video, or potentially just move your mouse down, click on the subscribe button, then you can listen to this guilt-free, having given me a little bit more support for running the channel. Totally up to you. Okay, so the subscriber benefit is a tactical tip. And for this one, it's going to be staging for objectives. And I'm going to talk about defensive staging and aggressive staging, or offensive staging, depends how you want to sort of look at it, and understanding the difference between the two, right? So this comes down to like board selection, this comes down to model movement, this comes down to all that sort of stuff, but it's a key principle that I have in my mind where I'm looking at what's on the board and trying to understand how I'm going to move my models and where I'm going to position my models to be able to achieve the effects that I want them to have. So that thing of where you position something to achieve an effect is what I refer to as staging. So it's where you stage to achieve an effect with your model. And there's sort of two main mentalities I have when I'm doing this. One is I want to stage defensively, i.e. I don't want to expose my model to unnecessary risk, but I still need to be able to do something, right? So usually for most games, that is going to be moving on to an objective to score a crit op, or maybe it's moving into a position to score a tack up, whatever you need to be able to do. But I'd say the defensive staging is I want to use the maximum amount of my movement to achieve that outcome, which is the furthest away from my opponent, right? So like in all things with staging, that's kind of like the mentality is where can I put my model so that I can achieve the objective that I want to do without exposing it to risk from what you want to do, again, which is probably kill my model, right? So let's start with defensive, and I'll talk through the mentality on that. So when you're looking at the board side, you're going to have your crit op objectives, and let's say that I'm going to think about where I want to stage for crit op, but as I said, you can apply this to tack op, you can apply this to anything else. It's a core principle, right? But let's do crit op first because it makes sense with the objective marker. So I want to look at where I want to position. I'm going to look at the movement stat of my team, and if I'm a melee team or if I'm a shooting team, right? So let's say I'm a shooting team and I have a 6-inch move stat. All right, well, I'm going to look at the board and I'm going to look at where the crit op objective is. So if I look at the crit op objective, I think to myself, okay, I want to be 6 inches away from the crit op objective in an area that's safe. And ideally, an area that's safe for me means heavy terrain if I don't have access to super conceal. If I have access to super conceal, it means light terrain in super conceal with a cover angle for both these instances, which is not threatened by my enemy, right? That's the ideal position. And then as I get to increasing more risk, I'm going to start to sacrifice a few of those things. Either I'm going to be closer to my opponent, i.e. they can move and get me potentially easier as I move closer towards the midboard and further away from my deployment zone. So I'm increasing in risk that way, or I'm increasing in risk in the sense that my cover lines are going to be suboptimal, and maybe it allows people to shoot me from a different angle that people wouldn't necessarily be able to normally. So if in an ideal world, if you could touch your sort of board edge, you know, your territory board edge, and be in heavy cover with a 90-degree cover line such that your opponent can't shoot you without being, you know, within 2 inches, something like that, on your board edge, that would be the most safe staging that you could achieve, right? But clearly, unless you have a movement bazillion team, you're not then going to be able to actually move up to the objectives. So I like to look at those objectives. I'm going to measure back my movement potential, and I'm going to figure out where I need to be. Now, if you're a 3 APL team, you might be able to go, okay, I can use a move and a dash to achieve this. So therefore, I can be essentially 9 inches away. And note that for my cover line, I probably want to have a 90-degree cover line. So actually, it's going to be 1 inch out and 8 inches forwards is where I need to be. And I can measure that out, and I can look to see where that would appear on the map. And I can look at it and go, all right, is there terrain that already exists that achieves these criteria that I want? I.e., I can be as far away as I want to be, I can be as safe from my cover line as I want to be, and the terrain type itself is safe enough to provide the protection that I want. I.e., it's heavy terrain that's 8 inches away from the objective on a 90-degree cover line, happy, I don't need to do anything else, right? Like that for me is a perfect defensive staging spot, because I know that with a 3 APL model, I can move, dash, touch that objective, and do the mission action, wherever it needs to be. Cool. The downside of that though, right, is, and with all of these things, I'm assuming you're going to tow on, right? So you're going to use the absolute maximum of your ability just to tow the objective, right? Now, the next stage of that is, does that work for where you want to go on the objective, right? So quickly, like, does towing it work, or do you need to get to the halfway mark to potentially like actually have cover, or can you place some terrain and cover on it, or wherever it needs to be, right? So consider that, like, where's safe on the objective, and does my movement get me to the safe place on the objective as well as achieve it? The next thing is what do I think the board state is, and does this work for me and my team? So if I'm a 2 APL team and I'm playing against a 3 APL team, and my plan is to out-activate them and then take this objective at the end, and I'm staging in such a way that I can do this, right? Well, I know that if they have greater APL control of that objective than me, then I'm not necessarily going to have the ability to do that, because I'll move onto the objective and then I won't have enough APL to take it away from them. So this kind of like defensive mentality works better for elite teams and teams that have APL manipulation of objectives. So let's say you have the ability to make someone count as 1 less, or make yourself count as 1 higher, or you have the ability to buff your APL, or you have the ability to do poach or something like this, like some method around control of this objective. This works quite well, because you can essentially use that movement, you expose yourself to the minimum amount of risk for the maximum amount of reward to be able to achieve these things. So that is, in my mind, how defensive staging would work in respect to a crit up objective, right? So I've been as far away from my objective as I can. Now, the opposite of that is offensive staging. So for this, I want to look at where I can move in order to be able to cover the whole of the objective with my threat range. Because let's say my opponent is doing the same thing, right? So they are going to position so they can move, dash, and tow the objective right at the very edge of where they want to be. And let's say I'm a 2 APL team or whatever it is, and I don't have the killing potential to kill that model, right? So, or the APL, sorry, to take over that objective. So therefore I need to use my killing potential to kill that model. So therefore when I stage, I now need to consider, okay, where can I be that means I can move to that objective such that my 2-inch shooting range covers all of the objective? And you play the exact same principle back, right? So I'm going to make sure that if I measure 2 inches from the furthest point to the middle, and then I measure my 6 inches back from that, and I account for my 1-inch horizontal movement, do I have terrain or whatever it is that's going to let me position there safely so that I can do that move, shoot, and kill that model, and then be on the objective to be able to achieve the control? That for me is offensive staging. The next so what of this, or the next like level you can go beyond, is denying where models want to be placed in order to achieve their objectives. So if you can go to the next stage, right? So initially you want to think, right, where do I position so I can hit this objective and score it myself. And then, okay, where can I position so that if my opponent does that to the objective, I can then kill them. And then the next point after that is, well, where can I position so that if they don't do that and they hide back, I can then actually kill the model that's staged up to be able to do that damage, right? So that's kind of like the sequencing. So with objectives, consider, like, do you have APL advantage, some method of being able to control it, sustain it, whatever, or manipulate the objective control in any way, which means that your opponent can't take it from you? If you do, defensive staging is probably sufficient. Are you durable enough to survive in that location? If you can't do that, you're probably going to have to consider doing some offensive staging, such that when your opponent tries to get onto that objective and hold it, you can actually kill them and remove that model so that you then hold it at the end. To do that, you need to be able to threaten the whole of the objective. This principle can be applied to all things: your attack op ranges, your sort of your kill op requirement to be able to kill models in staging areas, and your crit op requirement, right? So it's that logical step back from I need to be here, I need to therefore position here. If you do that and you think about that process and you look at the terrain and you find that you cannot achieve what you need to do based on the existing terrain that is there, then you can look at player place terrain to be able to achieve that for you, right? So let's give the example of, I have some heavy terrain that's in the right location and the right distance away from the objective, but the cover line for that terrain means that I'm going to be shot from an angle that I don't want to be shot by. Well, can I use a light barricade to solve that cover line such that I can't be shot from that angle? Yes. This now achieves all the other requirements I need. I've used a bit of light terrain to be able to achieve that. Or do I need to place a heavy barricade, potentially 4 inches up, such that my movement potential can reach the center objective? I'm going to use that as a staging point. Does that achieve what I want it to achieve? Is it possible that I cannot achieve any of these things based on where I am, and therefore player place terrain isn't going to be effective? I can use smoke grenades or something like this to be able to then give me a bit more chance of survivability in that location, noting that I'm probably going to get shot. So that's kind of like the logic that I think people should go with, and you can use your equipment to cover off those deficiencies that you have in your placement, in your terrain, and that sort of stuff to be able to make up for it. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I guess one caveat, the exact same principle applies for threat ranging for melee teams as it does for shooting teams. You need to end within 1 inch, right? So wherever you position, plus your 2 inches for your charge, like consider that ending within control range. It's the same mentality as someone with a shooting team trying to do a move and shoot. It's just a charge and a fight, but the staging is the same. It's just different distances based on your move potential. And note that for like each team, your movement stats vary, right? So some teams can move further, some teams can move less, and therefore, if you're playing, Hunk and Jaegers, you might need to stage further forwards, right? Like you need to be exposed to more risk to be able to do that. And if you're playing Corsairs or Void Dancers or something like this, or Blades of Cain, you can stage further backwards and reduce your risk to be able to achieve the same thing, right? So just be aware of that, consider it when it comes to what you're trying to do for that. So that's my tactical tip: staging for objectives, defensive versus offensive or aggressive, what we want to call it. 2 different ways of looking at it, and hopefully something you can apply to your game. If you like that tactical tip and you thought it was useful, can you consider giving me a like? It helps the algorithm, or just put a little comment saying great tactical tip, I learned a lot, because that really helps out the channel and helps hopefully get us out there to more people and let us continue to grow. All right, finally, we're doing the weekly Patreon priority question. So I'll probably put up a new Patreon priority question post after this video, just to keep it fresh and keep questions coming in, but because I've got a little bank of them now and I'm just trying to work my way through, but I'll try and keep it going. If you're interested in getting a Patreon priority question answered and you're already a patron, just answer that post. If you're not a patron, consider joining it, and then you can literally just chuck a question on the post or direct message me and I'll take it into consideration. I'll try and do one of these a week. So the Patreon priority question for this week is, what do you do to speed up your pre-game/setup phase? I find choosing equipment and setting up operatives can be quite time consuming for me. On a related note, with the upcoming removal of scouting, we're going to be even more squeezed for equipment. For teams that have lots of good options, how do you make the decision on what stays and what goes for a given matchup? Okay, so the reason why I've chosen this one is because I think the tactical tip about staging is relevant to helping you speed up this whole process. So I I think generally when you go into a game, you need to have a game plan, right? So I've done a video on the crit ops for people, and that's currently available on the Patreon now, but it will come out for general release soon, where I talk about the tempo for each mission, right? So I talk about, do I think this is a quick mission? Do I think this is a slow mission? Do I think it's a variable pace mission, wherever it is, right? So you need to sort of like start thinking about the crit op and the map and think how they're going to blend together and start building a game plan, right? So if you want to be nice and slow and you want to potentially, play a slow tempo game and a slow tempo tac op and all that sort of stuff, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to take the side where I can do this defensive staging because that's all I need to do. I don't need to play aggressive because I'm going to play everything slowly, right? And therefore, I'm going to score my points on the last turning point. Maybe you're playing like retrieval and you're going to pick up all 6 points on the last, like on TP4, and you're playing a game like Data or something like this where you're going to be able to potentially pick up all your VP on turning point 4. You don't want to expose yourself unnecessarily. You want your opponent to have to expose themselves to come to you, right? So when you look at the board side, you can go, all right, well, where's the best staging for this defensive staging for me? I'm going to choose the board side that achieves that. And then potentially the other way of looking at it, if you're not too fussed between the two, is where's the best staging for my opponent, right? Like, I think my opponent is a recon team and I think they really like to play flank. Is there a line of terrain that means that they can stick 11 models all on the center line and be impossible for me to reach and engage with, and therefore for them they're going to score flank like that because they're able to just score all these tac ops? Okay, if that's the case, then I must take that opponent's side. So just from the pre-game bit is knowing the missions and the tempo of the missions and what kind of game you want to play will inform your ability to choose a map side by looking at where you can stage and quickly be able to make the decisions. So I think what I'm going to do is probably make a little quick reference guide on Patreons of slow mission, fast mission, all that sort of stuff. And you can look at it and you can go, based on that, I think I need to take this sort of tac op. Therefore, I'm going to do this, and that'll speed up your game plan. Now, that being said, this will happen with experience and repetitions, right? So the more games you play, the more you'll get experience with this, and the more you'll be able to quickly recognize the tempo of a game and an opponent. Now, there's always going to be variations to this, right? Based on the opponent you play, you might be like, I know that this is going to be a fast tempo game because my opponent is going to force me to have a fast tempo game, and therefore I need to change my matchup and mentality accordingly. But that you only get really through experience and just repetitions of games. So, I think you can do that analysis and potentially if you're struck between or two different things, is just try and think a couple of moves ahead. So when you're choosing board side, think about the tac op you want to do. Is there an area on the map where I said that flank works for you, or plant banner becomes an immediate pick because you're I can get my plant banner there and I know my opponent can't reach it. Maybe you're Kazakin circle and you can go, I can teleport my person onto that highest possible vantage, throw a nano mine up there, and my opponent will never be able to touch that model as long as they exist, so I can just score 2 VP every turning point, and I'm happy with that, potentially, as an example, right? So something to consider in that respect. You can, if you want to, pre-script a lot of your answers. So you can go through and think, against this matchup, I'm going to choose this tac op, and against this matchup, I'm going to choose this tac op, and you can narrow down what you do. I would be careful about doing too pre-scripting, if that makes sense, because you want to have some flexibility based on what you're seeing in front of you and reacting to what your opponent's doing, what models they've chosen, all this sort of stuff. So be careful about overdoing that, but potentially a better way of doing it is just restricting the options that are available to you. So maybe, and in the Seek and Destroy video I talk about this, you go, I know that I'm only going to play this tac op on this particular mission, right? So you get to the table and you go, right, this is not that mission, therefore I'm never going to play that tac op. I'm just going to remove it from my options, and therefore I'm left with these two options, and I'm going to consider these two based on what's in front of me, right? And you can do that with some of your tac ops. So you can look at your archetypes, you can start removing some of the options where you go, I'm never going to take this, I'm never going to take this, or I'm always going to take this, and therefore you're restricting the options. Doing so is going to increase your decisions making speed, because you go, if you immediately discount something, it's one less thing to think about. Just reduce your options and start focusing on the options that you have remaining. The The other bit is that people are this part of this question is talking about equipment, right? So how do you make that decision for equipment, right? Like, is it worth taking? Is it not worth taking? I now have less equipment available to me, and therefore, what am I going to do? So, again, like, do that initial sift. So, right, what is my auto includes? What must I have every game? Like, is there a bit of equipment that, irrespective of what I see across the table from me, I'm always going to take it and just be like, yep, that's that, right? That's my auto include. Maybe there's 2 or 3 of them, and they're the ones that you always must have, whatever it is, right? And then you have the never includes, right? So this is something that I'm never going to take. Potentially you're like you're never going to take ladders because your team is void dancers. So that's one of this. Maybe you do take ladders, but my point being is, but based on your team rules, there is a thing that you're like, yep, I'm never taking this. Maybe it's faction equipment that isn't very useful or something like that. Remove those almost from your decision making, right? So get rid of those. Get rid of the auto includes, and then leave yourself with 2 options. So let's say you have 2 auto includes, and you now have 2 slots for equipment that you're always now thinking about what you're going to fill with it. Back to the staging question, right? Can you achieve staging with what you have that's out there, based on the map and the layout, to achieve the game plan that you want to achieve, and therefore like do the mission the way that you want to do it? And if that is the case, then you don't need to worry about using any like this player-based terrain. You can use other equipment such as mines. You can use ammo caches to increase your reliability with your models. You can use crack grenades to be able to increase your damage output. You can use smoke grenades to increase your durability. You can use stun grenades to be able to deny an area of the map, right? So you can start doing that instead, right? Because for staging, you're not going to require it. And then when it comes to like that next stage of thought, so like, again, the thought process that I think you should go through is, what are my auto includes? Got them. What are my never includes? Get rid of them. Do I require any terrain to be able to achieve the mission and my game plan? Yes, cool. I'll put that to one side. I must have this. And then what is left is like the options to be able to take things that you think are important. So when you are selecting those, I think you just have to have like a very clear mindset of, I will take this equipment and it will be for this purpose, right? So let's take barbed wire, for example. If you're taking barbed wire and you're going, right, I don't need any terrain, so now I'm into trying to root deny my opponent. And I think that I'm going to put this barbed wire down over here and it's going to successfully root deny my opponent. Well, if your opponent's placing equipment first, like, just have that caption in your mind that goes, what if they deny me that location? Like, is there going to be any other use for this barbed wire? Because I've seen it before where my opponent has taken barbed wire, and I believe they've taken it for a very specific purpose. And I know that they're going to take that barbed wire for that specific purpose. So I get a barricade, a light barricade, and I just put it such that the 2 inches aura around that barricade means that they can't place that barbed wire where they want to place it. And then they go, I now have a bit of equipment that I really don't want to use in that location, and I have no other backup for it. So now I've wasted an equipment choice, right? Because they didn't have a backup. So just consider, like, I'm definitely taking this for this reason. If it goes there, it's going to achieve this. Or if it goes over here, it's going to achieve this. Or if it's a piece of equipment that potentially isn't constrained by placing requirements and has less counter. Let's take stun grenades, for example. You're playing like ITD. I think stun grenades are a good use on ITD, because let's say you're playing against like wreckers, and you know that your wreckers are going to want to stage on a particular hatchway, right? Because they want to stage on that hatchway, they want to open the hatchway, and therefore they're going to be visible and within 6 of you, and therefore you can use that stun grenade to potentially stun those models because of where the staging is in the game, right? Now, if you think that you're an open board and you're not going to be able to achieve that, then don't use that equipment, right? But like, if it makes sense based on, I think they're going to have to go to this location and I'm going to have to put a model in this room, well, I can potentially deny them this or force them to spread out more than they want to, such that they then can't achieve this outcome that they want, right? So maybe it forces them to be a little bit further back than they want to be. So now they're not able to do the charge they want to do, or they can't move and shoot and get within 2 inches of you. Like, having that game plan for it, like, what's it buying you, what's it denying your opponent, I think is really important. So I guess the way to summarize that is, like, don't take equipment just because. Like, always have like a reason for why you're taking equipment. The way that I would say you can speed up that process, for both, map selection, all that sort of stuff is have your game plan, instantly identify what your sort of like must includes are, auto includes are, like your whatever it is. Like I will always consider these, put them into one bucket, instantly remove all the stuff that you're like, I'm never going to consider this, get rid of it straight away, and then be left with those decisions that you need to make and think, how can I use these and what is my use cases for them? Is it possible for my opponent to easily deny that? Is it not? And that's going to hopefully speed up your decision-making process. With all that said, like, there is a lot to think about in the pre-game, right? Like, I think people are often, they're so quick to rush into these things. And they go, I take this tack up because I always take this tack up. I'll pick this side of the board because I'm sat here already, right? Like, and they don't want to slow down that process. There is deliberately time built into the kill team sequence for you to go through those processes and like make those decisions, right? And if you spend 15 minutes of your game setting up, choosing the right tack up, choosing the right board side, choosing the right equipment so that you can play your game effectively, that is still a good use of time, right? So I'm not saying that you shouldn't finish your game. You score your VP by playing, not by doing the setup. But if you're not doing the setup correctly, you might not be scoring the VP because you might have the wrong game plan, you might have the wrong equipment, you might not be able to stage correctly. So hopefully that's a useful little answer to that patron priority question. It kind of threads into that tactical tip from the subscriber benefit. So hopefully that was of use. That is the end of this Metawatch video. We'll do it again next week, and I'll talk about what events have happened, and we'll do a quick up and coming events, a meta overview and all that sort of stuff, and another subscriber benefit and patron priority question. If you found that useful and you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. I really do appreciate it. Please share it with your friends, your family, anyone else that plays Killteam, people who don't play Killteam that you're trying to persuade to play Killteam. And as I said, dropping a like and a comment is worth like 100 views. So if you did enjoy it, then please just let me know that you enjoyed it. Or if you want to change something and you think that it can be better by me including something else, then please let me know in the comments box. I really do appreciate every single one of you engaging with the algorithm to hopefully get us on the way up in the Killteam's community and scene. So thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time.
That brings us to the end of the episode. Hopefully you found something new or useful while listening, and if you did, throwing us a like would be greatly appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss any episodes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on the bell so you get notifications as soon as the next one drops. It really is the best way to help a small channel like ours. And if you can't wait and you do want early access, we have a Patreon where you can get exclusive access to all our content ahead of time. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Just drop a comment below and we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host Ryan, this has been Turning Point Tactics, and we'll see you next week.